The cracked glass of a shattered radio console flickers with static. Fragments of a garbled German transmission float through the air, unintelligible, yet charged with unease. Amid the chaos, a blurred reconnaissance photo emerges, a monstrous, boxy silhouette looming over the horizon, its four engines roaring like mechanical beasts. The Germans mock it openly, calling it a lumbering flying fortress, unworthy of fear. Yet, beneath their laughter, an unsettling truth pulses. This very aircraft would soon carve their industrial heartland from the map. How could a plane deemed clumsy and obsolete become the instrument of devastation? What fatal underestimation hid behind their derision? In the summer of 1941, as the Luftwaffe tightened its grip over Europe, American engineers at Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego began blueprinting a new heavy bomber, the B-24 Liberator. Designed to outfly and outlast, it was born from a tangled web of competing military priorities and industrial ambitions. The Army Air Forces demanded long-range, large payload, and mass production capability. But the Navy's skepticism cast shadows on the project's future. A single faded memo from a Pentagon meeting reveals an uneasy compromise: speed and volume over pilot comfort and durability. Could this rush have been the spark that ignited a weapon unlike any the Axis anticipated? Was the Liberator truly a bomber, or a calculated gamble veiled in steel and canvas? The Liberator's design was a paradox in itself, sleek but angular, with a high aspect ratio Davis wing that defied convention. 4 Pratt & Whitney R-1830 engines roared beneath its narrow, slab-sided fuselage, giving it an unprecedented range of over 2,100 miles and a bomb load capacity exceeding 8,000 pounds. Yet it was notoriously difficult to handle, prone to stalling during tight maneuvers, and vulnerable to ground fire due to its thin skin. Blueprints recovered post-war reveal a defensive armament of up to 10.50 caliber machine guns, but reports from crews speak of gaps, blind spots the Luftwaffe's fighters exploited mercilessly. How could such a flawed design become the spearhead of Allied air dominance? What trade-offs lay hidden behind these numbers? The first real test came in the autumn of 1942, when the 44th Bombardment Group launched a raid over the industrial Ruhr region. Pilots expected to be met with fierce resistance, yet the Liberators advanced steadily through flak and fighter attacks. The Missions After Action report, smudged but legible, recounts how the B-24s maintained formation despite heavy losses, delivering ordnance with brutal precision. The Germans, stunned, intercepted frantic radio chatter. They laugh at our fighters, but their numbers and resilience break us. Was this the moment when illusion shattered? Why did German command fail to recalibrate their strategy before the damage escalated? In response, the Reich's High Command scrambled to devise countermeasures. Specialized night fighter units equipped with radar tracking and enhanced armament sought to intercept the Liberator streams, while factory workers implemented panic-driven fortifications around vulnerable production lines. Propaganda leaflets surfaced, ridiculing the flying lumberjack as slow and clumsy. Yet behind the scenes, secret reports detailed mounting losses and production halts. A confidential directive from a Luftwaffe general orders intensified focus on disrupting the bomber's support infrastructure, hinting at a growing desperation. How long could mockery mask the true threat? What cracks were forming in the German war machine under the Liberator's relentless shadow? By mid-1944, the tide had turned decisively. Operation Argument, known as Big Week, unleashed waves of B-24s against key aircraft factories and synthetic fuel plants across Germany. Maps seized from downed crews reveal meticulously planned routes, exploiting weaknesses in German radar coverage and flak. But despite fierce opposition and heavy casualties, the B-24 formations pulverized targets with unprecedented efficiency, triggering a crisis in German armament production. Memoirs from a factory engineer speak of assembly lines halted, raw materials scarce, and morale crumbling. How did the Liberator's persistence recalibrate the balance of power in the skies? Was this aerial onslaught the silent hammer that shattered the Nazi war industry? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. Beyond the scorched ruins of Essen and the smoldering remains of the Focke-Wulf factories, a deeper silence settled. A silence not of surrender, but of shattered confidence. Intelligence intercepts from late 1944 reveal a fragmented German command struggling to piece together what they now called the Liberator Enigma. A faded interrogation transcript from a captured squadron commander describes a weapon that was part machine, part myth, relentless, unyielding, and impossible to outmaneuver. The bomber's range allowed it to strike targets once thought safe, its numbers overwhelming flak defenses and forcing airfields to operate under constant siege. Yet, amidst the ruin, whispered debate surfaced. Was the Liberator a mere tool, or did it symbolize a shift in warfare's essence? How could the Germans reconcile their earlier scorn with the catastrophic damage inflicted? What secrets remained buried in the shattered factory's blueprints? Meanwhile, Allied tactical evolution accelerated. Flight logs from the 392nd Bombardment Group show increasing emphasis on tight formations and coordinated fighter escorts, tactics that transformed the B-24s from vulnerable targets into lethal arsenals of destruction. Pilots noted that the bomber's design flaws, its delicate skin and tricky handling, were compensated by sheer volume and firepower. Yet, the psychological impact was equally profound. German anti-aircraft crews reported a growing dread at the sight of the Liberator's silhouette, a symbol of inevitable ruin. A near-daily radio update from a flak battery near Cologne captured this shift in tone, from mockery to fear. Could it be that the bomber's greatest weapon was not its guns or bombs, but the terror it instilled? What did this fear reveal about the limits of German industrial resilience? Amidst the strategic bombing campaign, an unexpected player entered the fray: the Soviet Union. Archival maps from early 1945 show coordination between Western Allied air forces and Soviet ground troops, targeting the eastern factories supporting the Nazi war effort. Liberators, with their extended range, struck deep into Silesia and the Sudetenland, disrupting rail lines and supply chains vital for German industry. A secret memorandum from the Reich's Ministry of Armaments laments the dual-front devastation, underscoring how the bomber's reach extended beyond immediate targets to choke the entire logistical network. How did the Liberator's strategic versatility shape the final months of the war? Was its impact felt not just in shattered steel, but in broken supply lines and fractured alliances? One photo, long hidden in a forgotten archive, captures a moment rarely acknowledged: a B-24 crew surveying the ruins of an underground factory complex near Leipzig. The image's grainy edges hint at hurried development, yet the scene is stark: twisted metal, scorched earth, and the ghostly skeleton of machines halted mid-production. Post-war testimonies from forced laborers describe the Liberator raids as a relentless hammer, striking not just at buildings, but at the will to continue. The bomber's destruction went beyond physical damage, eroding the social fabric sustaining the Nazi war machine. How did these attacks alter the human landscape behind the war effort? What stories of survival and loss remain untold beneath these ruins? At the same time, German engineers raced to innovate, developing upgraded flak cannons and jet-powered interceptors like the Me-262. But even these desperate measures fell short. Technical reports from late 1944 reveal that many factories faced repeated disruptions, with repair efforts hampered by fuel shortages and workforce depletion. The relentless Liberator raids shattered production quotas, forcing critical delays in fighter aircraft deliveries. A confidential communication between Luftwaffe intelligence officers reveals growing frustration. Enemy air superiority is no longer temporary, it is systemic. Despite all efforts, the Liberator's shadow loomed larger, a silent arbiter dictating the fate of the Reich's industrial heart. Why did advanced technology fail to stem the tide this time? Was the Liberator's dominance and inevitability embedded in its design or in the broader strategic picture? In the war's final months, as Allied forces closed in on every front, the B-24 Liberator remained a symbol of relentless pressure. Flight logs show unceasing sorties over Berlin and other key cities, each mission chipping away at the Nazi war infrastructure. One surviving pilot's diary recounts the eerie calm before dawn raids, the distant rumble of engines, a grim prelude to destruction. Yet, even as the Reich crumbled, the Liberator's legacy was contested, hailed by some as a war-winning instrument, dismissed by others as a brutal tool of attrition. What truths lie buried in these conflicting memories? How does the story of the B-24 challenge our understanding of technological warfare and human endurance in the face of annihilation? As the winter of 1944 deepened, intercepted German communications revealed a startling shift, an almost obsessive focus on the B-24's production sites rather than frontline units. A decrypted signal from a regional command center spoke of crippling losses not to men, but to machines, underscoring how the Liberator's impact transcended the battlefield. Factory blueprints confiscated post-war show hurried architectural modifications, reinforced concrete bunkers, underground assembly lines, and labyrinthine tunnels designed to evade aerial bombardment. Yet, despite these desperate measures, reports from sabotage units indicated widespread worker fatigue and declining efficiency. The Liberator was not just destroying buildings. It was undermining the very industrial lifeblood of the Third Reich. How did these repeated strikes evade anticipation? Why was the German command unable to shield its most vital assets from destruction, despite clear warnings? Further evidence emerged in the form of a damaged flight recorder recovered from a downed Liberator in early 1945. Its fragmented data painted a chilling portrait of relentless missions deep into enemy territory, often within mere minutes of enemy radar detection. The bomber's unique design, its high wing loading, and long, slender fuselage allowed it to fly at higher altitudes and greater speeds than many believed possible for such a heavy aircraft. Radar logs from German operators, preserved in archives, confirm repeated failures to track formations until it was too late. This technological edge, hidden within the Liberator's silhouette, was a critical factor in its deadly success. How could such a complex machine be so underestimated? Was this radar evasion a calculated design feature or a fortunate accident? Meanwhile, the psychological warfare unleashed by the Liberator raids grew in intensity. Leaflets dropped over German cities depicted the bomber as an unstoppable iron beast, a symbol of overwhelming Allied might. Civil defense reports from late 1944 describe mounting civilian panic during night raids, with blackout protocols stretched to their limits and emergency services overwhelmed. Interestingly, intercepted letters from factory workers reveal a fractured morale. Some cursing the relentless bombers, others secretly hoping for the war's swift end. The Liberator's presence blurred the lines between military target and civilian terror. What role did this psychological dimension play in Germany's industrial collapse? Can the destruction of factories be separated from the human cost woven into these raids? In parallel, Allied strategic planners refined their approach, incorporating lessons learned from each mission. Intelligence briefings from the 15th Air Force highlight the increasing use of synchronized bombing runs, combining B-24 Liberators with P-51 Mustang escorts to suppress Luftwaffe counterattacks. Detailed maps show evolving flight corridors designed to exploit blind spots in German air defenses. These operational shifts amplified the bomber's lethality, turning it into a precise instrument of systematic destruction. Yet, some post-war analyses suggest that these strategies were as much about psychological pressure as physical damage. Why was the Liberator chosen as the centerpiece for this evolving doctrine? Did its design inherently lend itself to such adaptability, or was its success a product of human ingenuity layered onto steel and engines? As the Reich's industrial network frayed, clandestine German reports surfaced describing the Liberator effect as a critical factor forcing the relocation of key production facilities, often to poorly equipped and hastily constructed sites in the Harz Mountains and beyond. These moves, however, came too late and strained resources further. A secret directive from the Ministry of Armaments details desperate attempts to shield remaining factories with anti-aircraft guns and smoke screens. But these efforts were largely ineffective against the Liberator's altitude and formation tactics. The bomber's sustained pressure had not only destroyed physical assets, but also drained the administrative capacity to respond. How did this logistical paralysis accelerate Germany's defeat? Was the Liberator more than a weapon? Was it a strategic catalyst that dismantled the Reich's war economy from within? Finally, in the closing weeks of the war, Allied reconnaissance gathered images of devastated industrial landscapes, some so damaged they appeared almost unrecognizable. Among them was a series of photographs showing the ruins of a major tank manufacturing plant near Kassel, wiped out by coordinated B-24 raids. These images, stark and haunting, stood in sharp contrast to early German propaganda photos that once mocked the Liberator as a slow, awkward bomber. The transformation was undeniable. The aircraft that had been derided became an executioner of factories, a shadow that erased entire production lines overnight. What does this reversal tell us about the nature of technological warfare? How did the Liberator's journey from ridicule to ruin redefine the course of the air war over Europe? In the aftermath of the shattered factories and broken production lines, a final, grim assessment emerged from German intelligence files dated April 1945. The B-24 Liberator was no longer seen as merely a bomber, but as a weapon of strategic annihilation. A confidential report labeled it the airborne scourge, emphasizing its role in severing the lifelines of the Reich's military industry. Yet, buried beneath these cold words was a deeper acknowledgement. This machine had transcended its metal and engines to become a symbol of relentless pressure, an unstoppable force that eroded the very foundations of Nazi Germany's war effort. Survivors' testimonies recall how the bomber's silhouette became synonymous with doom, a spectral presence haunting the skies until the final collapse. What had started as mockery evolved into terror, and terror into devastation. The Liberator's paradox lay in its contradictions, a plane criticized for clumsiness, but capable of surgical precision, a design riddled with flaws, yet mass-produced to overwhelming effect, an aircraft underestimated by its enemies, but feared by all who witnessed its power. As the Reich crumbled under the weight of relentless bombing, it became clear that the Liberator was not just a tool of destruction, but a decisive factor in the Allied victory. It erased factories and shattered morale, rewriting the rules of industrial warfare. The story of the B-24 Liberator challenges us to reconsider how technology, strategy, and human resilience intersect in war. It exposes the dangers of underestimation and the unforeseen consequences of innovation. Behind the iron and fire lies a narrative of relentless adaptation and brutal efficiency, one that German command struggled to comprehend until it was too late. How many other weapons of war carry such hidden legacies? What lessons remain buried in the smoke of those shattered factories?